What's up, gang? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are continuing our series of dreaming up a Super Smash Bros. Style fighting game roster for an Avatar The Last Airbender video game. In the past two videos, we've followed the Super Smash Bros. Model of our first game only featuring 12 characters. I limited the first game to Season 1 of the show. Then we continued on to our second game, the Super Smash Bros. Melee of our series, where we covered Seasons 1 and 2 of the show, adding a bunch of new characters and kind of rounding out the roster a bit. And in this video, the finale to at least part 1 of this series, we are doing the Super Smash Bros. Brawl of Avatar The Last Airbender. The roster size has been increased, and we are covering the entirety of the original show. So any character that you haven't seen join the roster yet that you've hoped would make it, this is their chance. Without further ado, we are going to finish out our Super Smash Bros. Avatar The Last Airbender fighting character roster. So we have our Immortal 12 that are never to be cut, and then every character that we added in the second video is returning as well. So our first newcomer, the main villain of the entire series, but we don't actually see him in person revealed until Season 3, we've got Fire Lord Ozai. Ozai is obviously going to be a very powerful firebender. He will have strong and powerful fire attacks as well as lightning attacks. Basically a stronger but less agile and mobile version of Azula. Then moving on, we're adding another firebender to the roster. We're adding Zhong. So he's going to have a really cool fighting style. He'll do a lot of big, impressive movements. He will fly around like he does in the Siege of Ba Sing Se, as well as make big pillars of fire, kind of a signature move of his. And along with Zhong, we're also going to add Pian Dao, Sokka's master. And with that, we are going to finish our Order of the White Lotus. We'll represent every Grand Lotus member, which is pretty cool. Pian Dao, obviously a swords master. He will be using all sorts of advanced sword techniques and be the most traditional sword fighting style character on the roster. We've got a lot of firebenders on the roster, but it is Book 3 Fire, and there's one more firebender that I wanted to be sure to include, Sparky Boom Man, or Combustion Man. This guy is going to be a absolute unit on the battlefield. He'll be hard to knock back. He will obviously have his kind of psychic fire blasts where you'll be able to target different areas on the stage and cause explosions. Should be a really cool character. Moving on from there, I noticed that we really need more airbenders and waterbenders on the roster, and just due to the nature of the show and the characters we meet, there are not a lot of options for either of these roles. But for airbenders, I think there's an obvious one that we're missing, and a very well loved character in the Avatar universe. We're going to add Monk Gyatso to the roster. So Gyatso will be the only character on the entire roster that will use exclusively airbending. As the series goes on, Aang obviously learns how to use more elements. In the first game, he just used air and a little bit of water. In the second game, he used air, water, and earth. And in this game, he'll be using all the elements. But I imagine Gyatso may take on some of Aang's old airbending moves that he had lost throughout the series. So people that liked playing as Aang could use those moves through Gyatso. But also just Gyatso is going to be extremely proficient and powerful in his airbending. He'll have a less evasive and more powerful style than Aang. Then for a waterbending representative, I think the obvious choice here would be to go with Hama. Hama is a character that's introduced in Season 3. The gang runs into her in the Fire Nation, actually. And she is the person that invents bloodbending. So obviously bloodbending would be extremely overpowered, but I'd imagine like maybe there could be a meter where As she's fighting, her meter charges up, and then when the meter is full, she'll be able to control a character's movements in some capacity for a short time. Nothing too terribly broken, but incorporating bloodbending in some capacity, I think would be cool. It'll differentiate her from Katara and Paku and the Swamp Benders quite a bit. Next, we are adding the Dai Li. There are not many characters on the roster that are just like generic enemies or generic fighters, but the Dai Li are a really big part of the series, and they even follow Azula to the Fire Nation and serve as her personal bodyguards. So I think that they are prevalent enough in the story that they deserve to be on the roster here. And they've got unique fighting styles too. They launch those little like rock hands to grab onto people, and I imagine those could serve as pretty cool and unique moves in a fighting game. Next, we have a character that we have discussed before, but I didn't add in the past. I am going to go ahead and add June. I think she is a cool character that has a really unique fighting style. We don't really see her do much on her own in the show. She normally depends on her little creature guy, but I'd imagine that she could use her whip and do some kind of acrobatic flips and stuff. I think there's plenty of material to be creative and form a moveset for her. So I think she's a cool character, and we're gonna add her into the roster. Only a few spots left, and a character that I've always really liked that I wanted to include on the roster is Katara and Sokka's dad, Hakoda. Hakoda is a warrior for the Southern Water Tribe, the chief of the Southern Water Tribe, actually. And we see him do some cool things in the show. He's obviously a very capable fighter, and I thought he'd be a cool addition to the roster. He'll fight with a spear, which would be unique to the roster, but also he could have the ability to, if he's fighting somebody with weapons, to disarm them and kind of change how they would have to fight, because that's something we see him do rather easily in the show, and I think it'd be cool to incorporate that into his moveset in some way. And that brings us to the final two characters of the roster. We finished out the Order of the White Lotus, so I wanted to finish out the 4 previous avatars that Aang communicates with in the show. We've already got Roku and Kyoshi, so I thought it'd be cool to add in Avatar Korok and, of course, Avatar Yang Chen. And with that, we have our complete Avatar The Last Airbender fighting game roster. If you like this video, please consider leaving a like, comment, and mention some characters that you think that I missed or you think that should be included instead of some of the choices I've made. I'd love to hear your thoughts on those, and I will see you guys in the next one. Later.